luckily enough, yes, I was a gym rat, and I love being in the gym. To a detriment, I think, too, at the same time. I think it was probably into my late 20s, into my 30s going, what else are you doing besides this? Like, what other hobbies? What are the things are like exciting you about life outside of just living in this gym, right? And trying to make something out of this. And that was a reflection point, right? And thank God I've surrounded myself with great friends. I have my family dynamic. My siblings are incredible, like, you know, people that I get to bounce things off on a regular basis. And plenty of kind of self-reflection too, I think.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of All Smith. Today's guest is the North American Athletic Director for Fitstop Fitness. One of my good friends, a fellow member of Team Too Tall. We should have pressed record probably an hour ago because we were playing ping pong back and forth. But he's a visionary who has taken his passion for fitness and helped to transform it into a thriving business with Fitstop and the founder, Peter Hall. And it's an amazing thing that you're doing, man. It's really cool to connect with you and have you in the flesh. I'm glad we didn't do this remote.
I appreciate that, man.
None other than Pete Pisani, guys. What's up, man?
Thank you, bro. Honestly, I feel like I need to give you the intro now. The nice warm welcome.
A knucklehead, a professional mistake maker, a lifelong learner.
We all are. That's the thing. You didn't write those notes for myself, too.
Full degenerate.
Exactly. No,
Dude.
man, thank you for having me. I know we've been trying to do this for quite some time, so good to finally get back down to San Diego. Honestly, like my second home. So happy to be here with you. And of course,
I'm stoked to have you down, dude.
Fun.
And it's so different having somebody in person.
Yeah.
Something I think about often from an energetic standpoint is like, where do I stop and you begin? And you can feel that frequency when we're on a screen. You can't quite feel that, right? There's time differences. There's like, oh, I just finished coaching a class and I'm like sort of here now, but mentally I'm kind of not here. It's like, right now we get to share in presence, and that's really special. So I appreciate you making the time.
Yeah, and that kind of your team reached out, of course, and we've been trying to coordinate this forever. And they're like, well, you want to just do the Zoom? And I was like, as much as I'm happy to talk via Zoom, and we've done this, of course, it's like part of life now via COVID, but I'm just like, I want to feel his energy, right? Yeah. I want to be in the same space as him. I want this to feel right. So let me make the time. I'll figure out my schedule and we'll get down there and we'll do this right. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
And it worked out well because now we get to do a fun LSKD event at Fitstop La Jolla on Friday.
Yeah. Yeah. I will honestly be back up in LA for just the day, got some work, and then I'll come back down on Friday, but I'm happy and excited for that entire thing. So
very cool,
yeah,
man.
Yeah.
What's Fitstop like looking like right now? Like what's lighting your heart on fire in relation to that? I'm sure we'll get in and unpack the story as to how you got there. But like as of right now, what do you kind of have cooking a little bit?
You know what? I think it's, and we chatted about this a little bit. It's those chapters in your life, right? Where you just go, am I capable first, right? Do I have, all the tools, all the necessary kind of like fragments and pieces of what you've done, either from a business acumen and understanding of fitness, the markets, whatever that might look like. It's like, hey, are you capable? But now at your point in life, are you willing to jump into something that's brand new, that's fresh, that's exciting, that has all the components that you know and love from a fitness modality and the capabilities to now bring something like that to the US? I understand the legwork. I understand the time. I understand the dedication, especially to something that can change lives, right? Not only from an Australian point of view, because it's an Australian company. Now it's just like, we're going to break into this US market, this beast of a market, and help people understand like what Fitstop is all about. And it's just like, I've been now with them for 2 years, and we just celebrated our 2-year anniversary.
Congratulations,
my 2-year
man.
anniversary. Yeah. And I didn't realize, I was like, I feel like it's been 2 months, but the time and the commitment and just like the dedication to like the delivering of this message has been so much fun that for the past years, I felt like I haven't been going to work. And I say that in a very kind of like naive / like, self-promotion way, because I love my work. I love my job, and they've afforded me, that same reality to now do that with Fitstop. So it's been a blast, and I can't wait for the further development, the further execution, the further gym openings here in the US. But yeah, it's been an exciting 2 years so far.
That's really rad, man. The word that comes to mind, or the phrase rather, is risk tolerance, right? Like jumping into something brand new. You're feeling the frequency from the founder. You're observing what they got going on in Brisbane, there in Australia. You're kind of taking a peek behind the curtain. You're trying to compare it to your historical reference within the CrossFit space, within Fit there in London, with F45. I mean, you have a ton of health and fitness and wellness experience. So there's comparing and contrasting associated with that. What's allowed you to develop the risk tolerance to be like, you know what, I'm going to cannonball into this new venture?
That's a great question. Look, I've always been in love with my comfort zone. And when I say in love with it, I've always understood how to bend, my will, my abilities to like what I know and what I'm capable of and how to really perform inside of that. Now, I'm not saying that I've stepped completely outside of my comfort zone with these pivots and shifts, because it's still kind of living all within the same dynamics of like fitness, right? The industry of basically a fitness. But I see enough of the ebbs and flows to be like, okay, let me now make a calculated risk change to jump into something that I know will probably take me to either the next level of like my expectations for myself, or to help like something that I know potentially has that real potential to jump into the, I should, now let me kind of rephrase that. In essence, I'm saying is, hey, I calculate each and every risk every time I make a pivot or a shift, right? But at the same time, I understand the risk that's involved with that. So I look at myself internally and go, hey, are you still capable of making those changes and jumping into something like this? And so, yes, I've made those switches quite often throughout my career, and I like it and I've appreciated it, but it's also helped me develop myself to become a better person for not only like the industry, but the community and the people that I'm involved with on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's been really cool to see, man. Like, especially in this day and age, you see things twofold. You see people jumping ship like almost every week, right? Like this millennial generation is very like grass is greener on the other side, tension, friction, boom, take the jump.
Yeah.
And it's usually a money jump, not a value or a systems jump. And you've understood processes and procedures and relationships, and you've looked at the top, like, okay, can I relate with the vision here? Okay, then I make the jump.
Right.
But also like, you've spent enough time with Stay Classy CrossFit, with F45, with Fit there in the UK, and now with Fitstop, where it's like, it wasn't just a lick. It wasn't just like you got a flavor taste. It's like you stayed, you really tried to implement tangible change. And then when you realized, okay, like the uncomfortable conversations are more frequent now. There's not a lot of growth potential. I'm not aligning with certain things. Okay, now it's the calculated move.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important distinguisher, because it shows like a peek into your mind. It peels back the layers of the onion a little bit so people understand. It's like you're not just jumping at a money thing or a location change or, a brand new relationship or the thing that's just the shiny object.
Yeah.
It's definitely trying to implement real change, which is an important distinguisher for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, look, we talked about this a little bit too. It's just like, I always want to be seen as an asset to anybody that I go to work with or I actually help to improve a business upon or something like that, versus a liability, right? And I think that's so critical, especially now. It's just like with my tenure, like the certain traits that I've developed throughout the industry and stuff like that, and just making those moves. I sit down with each and every one of those owners, those operators, people that have had the success, but to now have the conversation with me to be like, hey, I want to bring you onto my team. It's like, let's make sure this is a fit, right? Let's make sure that we both are on the same page and I can help propel this business or, whatever brand you're developing to the next level, versus me just being a muddy pit for you. So it's just like, I always want to make sure that we align there first before we take any action, right? Because I think people become very reactionary. They go, I want that, I want that, I want that. And it could be just from a human capital expectation too. And it's just like, hey, I understand the want is there, but can you facilitate it, right? Yeah. Do you have the means? Are you in that place and time? And it's just like, for me, I thought most of the time it's not luck, but it's just circumstance and timing to be like, hey, I can now make this shift or I can make this pivot.
It's also leveraging relationships. You have great relationships with people in the space. Functional fitness, man. It's a really saturated market. We're seeing a little bit of it everywhere.
Yeah.
It's all over social media. Taking a little trip down memory lane, we'll talk about COVID. And, a lot of gyms in the world were shut down.
Yeah.
Functional fitness was tough. That's when you were working with Fit at the time, a little bit in the UK. We saw the rise and fall of Peloton. I was doing a lot of the online workouts for Vuori at the time.
There you go.
And everybody was just simply trying their best. They're trying to create a seamless, low barrier to entry to community type connective movement with limited equipment.
Yeah.
People simplified, but the baseline was move often, right? Or going back to the CrossFit acumen of constantly varied functional movement performed at varied intensities.
Yep.
When I say functional movement, and we're looking at some of the things that you and I spitballed loosely offline, we're looking at F45, core power yoga, we're looking at the yard, we're looking at Fitstop, we're looking at CrossFit gyms, we're looking at Performance 360, we're looking at spin, we're looking at all kinds of different types of variants, especially in sexy Southern California. Everybody wants their shirt off, they're by the beach, bikini season, we're coming to the tail end of that. What comes to mind when we try to unpack functional fitness?
Dad, I whenever I hear functional fitness, I always think it's such a relative term. I mean, okay,
It's huge.
Yeah,
It's an ocean.
Right. And look, I fell in love with movement at a very young age, and that was through sport, right? And I think people relate most of the time. It's like, hey, yes, I was moving when I was younger. I wanted to continue to apply myself, and then I saw how the weights or basically the weight room was now applying or helping to my sport, right? But I always felt like regardless whatever I was doing, it was still helping with the function, the performance of my work, right? Or whatever the sport I was playing. But now that's been like kind of packaged, marketed correctly, and then displayed for the masses to be like, hey, it's like, functional movement is now it's like I can provide this for everybody, right? I can package it and produce it for you.
But it's no longer just for athletes.
Yeah. But I think honestly, what you're doing is you're biting for time, right? Inside these businesses of the functional fitness space, it's like you're not only competing with, other brands or expectations of like these group or boutique spaces. It's just like I'm competing with, the at-home space, let's say the big box gyms, and just your time in general. I'm competing with the internet. And I say that because, there's an abundance of information that we can now grab and tug on with the internet, and we can go out there and we can find, we can look, we can, everything is there as far as information is concerned. But the amount of time that you're now equating to that information, not all good, some great. It's just like I'm competing with the people that are stuck behind their phones, doing their work, watching YouTubes or watching a series. It's like that's an hour out of your day where you're going to commit to that screen or whatever that might be, consuming that information versus getting some movement in your life, right? That's my biggest qualm, or what I've seen kind of like this pivot and shift from this abundance of information. Now how it's affecting my work and it's affecting these spaces is just like I'm competing with not only these different gyms or these different modalities. I'm competing with time, right? And these commitments that people have to their devices, the content, all those things. Like I know people are going to hopefully sit down and listen to this, but hopefully they're being productive while they're doing so. So
that is what I love about podcasts is you could throw it on and go for a walk. You can put it on the background while you're driving your kids to school, doing laundry. That's typically how I consume podcasts. I'm doing something else. Yeah. You're not wrong about that. And I'd also throw in, it's in relation to what you said about time, but so many people are driving past potentially 30, 40 gyms to get to your space.
Right.
And like that's, at least for me personally, that's not something I take for granted. I'm like, wow, this person made an active choice to come see me today. Yeah. What an honor. And because of that, I want to over deliver. And I call it gas. I call it give a shit.
Yeah.
And that's the secret sauce to me in the sense of like these apps, I don't know if somebody gives a shit, right? They might be using AI technology to spit out a program that is probably very well put together, sequenced well, the reps, the percentages, like they're probably going to create change. But when you don't feel like somebody gives a shit, like at the end of the day, compliance is science. The program that you do consistently, when I say do, I don't mean like, oh yeah, Coach Pete, I did my, 5 sets of 5 back squats today. It's like, did you do them or did you like really do them? And there's a difference. And I hope people can tangibilize that and hear that in my voice. There is a variance between like, I sort of did the 5x5. I checked the box. I wasn't really into it. Yeah. My knee was hurting. I had tough biomechanics. I didn't really hit my percentages versus like, hey, I really grinded it out. I put time, attention, and care and attention, and like really put forth an honest effort to create change. And if the load wasn't there that day, I added in as much intra-abdominal pressure or optimal muscle contractions. I put a lot of focus into my movement patterns to try to get better today. And I think when you have somebody that cares, that creates change, and people can feel that.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like, people will forget what you said. They'll forget what you did. They'll forget the fucking program. They'll never forget the way you made them feel.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, like, you are competing against those things, but you have the number one assets, you. I think there's something to be taken away from that.
Look, and I appreciate that. And I think, look, I've had the opportunity to now work with a couple of major franchise firms, F45 included, and now with Fitstop. And probably one of the most critical things that I kind of like hold is like one of those benchmarks as far as like my career, my time, is I'm a scary judge of talent. And now when I say that, it's just like, how can I get somebody to buy in who is not only willing and capable, but also willing to perform at that 100% or the 120% or that gas, right? For me on a regular basis, right? So then I can now scale and produce that multiple times over and over again. And the one thing that I critically look at when bringing on any trainers or developing any trainers for, the number of fit stops we have here in the US is just like, first, do they care? Is there a level of empathy? What's their work ethic? At the same time, it's just like, are they doing it with passion? Do they really love this, or do they just see this as another job? I think those things are just so critical for like developing your team, but helping them understand is just like, yes, the studios are great, the weights are great, the community, the aspects, the energy, but people show up time and time again, not for that. They show up for you, right? And be respectful of that, appreciate that, and be thankful for it too, because most of the time people think, oh, I'm just going through the ebbs and flows. They talked them into getting here. Now I just have to perform. It's like, no, they're showing up for you because they care about who you are and how you treat them when you have them for that 50 minutes or that hour. It's such a vital piece. I think that most trainers just get caught up in the motion of everything, that they don't understand the impact that they're making in these people's lives. And then just appreciating that process while they're doing it. That's what I loved about it. It's like, I did some crappy jobs, but as soon as I got to be a coach and a trainer, I was like, this doesn't feel like work, because now I'm just applying energy. I'm applying fun. I'm helping these people get better. And so that's why I loved and appreciated it so much. I was like, this will never feel like work to me, because I'm just feeding off of that. Selfishly, I love that, So it's just like, I think that's, especially in this industry, if you can show that, if you're capable of like holding those principles close to you while you're coaching, you're training, you're gonna excel, right? You will excel, right? And I see it all the time with great coaches. It's like, this is just a launching pad for you. You're going to do something incredible and amazing, right? And it's just like, and then you realize the ones that are just, coasting along, doing their thing, they see it as a job, and that's fine, right? But at the same time, it's just like the ones that really make an impact and make a career out of it, I could see it immediately, right from the get-go.
That's great that you can recognize that. What was your first introduction to sport and movement? Like, how did you fall in love with that, where you realized, like, I want this to be a part of my life for the future too?
Yeah. Long story short, my mother needed babysitters for the 4 kids. It was her and 4 kids. So she put us in every sport known to man. I was playing baseball, basketball, soccer, football, you name it. If there was a coach that was cheap enough and willing to hold on to me for a couple of hours, along with the other, 3 siblings, it was just like, my mom was like, go do it. Right. But I think it was also getting recognized inside of the sports and being athletic and applying that fitness and having those coaches go, hey, you're actually pretty good at this. As a kid, that's all you want, right? Is just like subtle recognition, right? It's of course from your parents, but for the people that you're trying to impress upon. And so for me, I was just like, oh, this makes sense, right? If I'm good at this, lean into it, which I did, and then I think my mother, at the age of, I might have been in, 8th grade or something, 7th or 8th grade, and she bought me this rinky dink, like half rusted bench press with some weights. I'm pretty sure it's like it looked like I probably could have gotten like hepatitis off this thing, right? But sat down, did way too much bench press. Think I gave myself DOMs for like a week straight, and I was just like, there's something about this I love, but something that's like, I know it's just like, this is tough. This isn't easy. But I also saw the byproduct was the aesthetics, right? I'm just like, oh, it's like, now I got a chest and I got arms, and it's just like, but then I also watched it how it helped with the performance in the sport. It's like, oh, now you're stronger. Now you're moving quicker. Now you're being more explosive.
Also probably a little bit more confident too. The way you walk around, the musculature is developing a little bit.
Yeah. And, and for me, I knew, I was like, this will be a staple in my life, right? I'll do this just about every day, right? It's like, if anything, this is like the same. I see this as just as like, hey, I got to brush my teeth twice a day. I also got to be in the gym for at least an hour. Like, that's just part of life, right?
That's cool.
And people say lifestyle. It's like, no, that's just been part of my acumen for years and years and years. Outside of playing sports, right? I still love the fact of just being physical. I think it's just like that quality of life elevates tenfold when you're capable of moving, adjusting, and just staying in motion. Yeah.
Free is the way to be. Life beats us up a bit and causes some bumps and bruises, but that doesn't mean we have to stay on the sidelines. This is why we've partnered with Kinneon Labs. Get back to doing what you love with this incredible portable device designed to get you back in the game. Kinneon is on a mission to move people from pain to possible with their top-rated red light therapy and laser solution, which tackles inflammation along with muscle and joint pain quickly and effectively. What I love is that it's portable and rechargeable, making it easy to actually incorporate into my everyday life consistently. It's small and lightweight, so you can throw it in your gym bag or work bag, or even an overnighter. Kinneon's lasers and LED combo make this cutting-edge device extremely versatile for use with general aches and pains, as well as chronic back pain, arthritis, post-surgery recovery, endometriosis, and more. This has been an amazing tool keeping my elbows and knees pain-free for pressing, pulling, and squatting in the gym. Great tools like the Move Plus give me the freedom and flexibility to continue living life on my terms without limitations. There are a lot of reasons why over 15,000 people are using this device and rating it 4.7 stars and above. Head on over to kinneon.io and use code ALLSMITH at checkout to begin your pain-free journey. When did you transition from sport into full-time, training and functional fitness? What did that look like kind of in that high school to college to life after school?
After sport kind of ended, which was abrupt, went through about 1 million different injuries in a very short amount of time. And I was terrified because it was such a big part of my identity. And now looking back, I probably was a little depressed because I thought like, hey, this will be the path forever. This is like the direction I'm going to head. But I was still showing up to the gym, like kind of limping through it, trying to figure out what was next. And I had done a couple tries, some sprint tries to be like, okay, maybe this will be like my competitive side. I can still stay healthy, but I hated the modalities. I hated doing them over and over again. Then I got into bodybuilding for a little bit, hated that. But it was my first introduction here in San Diego by a couple of SWIC guys to say, hey, I think you'll love this CrossFit thing. This was like back in 2009 or 2010 when I first moved out here. And I went over to Outlier CrossFit here in San Diego. Met some
Mission Valley, super hot right now.
Oh, Adam Stevenson and the boys over there, man. And they're all Navy guys, have a bunch of kettlebells, dumbbells thrown across this room, and they're just like, we're going to go fast, and we're not going to stop until we throw up, kind of a situation. I was like, sign me up,
That's awesome.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I knew exercise, I knew movement, but what I loved about CrossFit, just because I am of that mindset, it kept me competitive, right? As much as it's like I see it maybe as a potential sport, it's just like it was one of those things. So I'm just like, I get to compete. I get to kind of do this thing. I'm still around people that have like-minded, expectations of what they're looking for from a gym. This makes sense to me, right? And so I just leaned into that. And, of course, did the competitive thing for quite some time, the Too Tall crew. I knew it was completely in the wrong sport right from the get-go, just because it's stature
trying to
and
get
size.
A fish to climb a tree.
Exactly. But, dude, I mean, those years of just the brutal workouts with people, having fun, enjoying the process. I always say there's something to be said about shared suffering, and exactly that's what I experienced, right? But, at some point, I just go, hey, enough's enough with that. It's like your body can only take so much. I think it was at a competition, and this might have been up in Seattle, And I had one of my sponsors fly me out for this thing. I literally just got off a vacation, and I'm just showing up just to kind of show up. And I'm watching this kid. He might have been like 19, 20 years old, and he's just warming up with 225, just power snatching this thing. And I'm like, I'm done, dude. I'm done. It's like if these kids at this age are throwing around this kind of weight, doing it at this level, it's like we've seen our time in the sun. It was fun, but enough's enough.
Yeah.
But it's just like also the seriousness of it all. Right. I remember that. And I remember every time we would start, they would line up in the stalls, they'd get out there, and the boys were just like locked in, which was great. I loved it because it's like, it reminded me how I was locked in at a young age too. And I just wanted to have fun with it. Right. I was out there having a goof, and I was like, guys, we're the coolest kids on the chess team. Stop it. Just relax. Nobody cares. Nobody cares who wins this thing or whatever. Granted, now there's monetary incentive and stuff like that, but I was just like, have fun, guys. Like, we don't have to crush our souls through this process.
I think you're hitting the nail on the head there, though. Like, early on, it was fun.
Yeah.
Like, I just remember, like, training sessions and, training partners, if they turn their head, it's like I'm throwing a 1 pound plate on this side that they can't see, so I can beat them by 1 pound, and then I let them know later.
Later on. Yeah.
And, like, little competitive advantages like that, but, like, it very much became, like, all about having the tripod and social media all the time. And like back in the day, we only really videoed the PRs.
Yeah.
It wasn't videoing everything.
We had to. It's just like, we have to submit the video. It's
like,
I'll pull out the cameras.
Yeah, of course. And like that changed the nature a little bit.
Yeah.
Where it was like people were changing their demeanor when the phone was on versus when the phone was off. Then it led to just like, like this is serious time versus like when I was competing, it was like I was a coach. I served the community.
Yeah.
And then I also competed. It wasn't like celebrities coming in and then training. And I think that creates like a disconnect between the community. And I think that's a constant flex point within the CrossFit space of like you have the sport, very respectable, high caliber, not super relatable, but damn impressive. But then you have like what would be categorized as like recreational fitness.
Yep.
And even me saying that, it sounds less than. And it's not, right? It's like it's different goals. It's moms that are kicking ass, working 2 jobs, taking care of their kids. It's dads trying to be stellar in all the different spokes in the wheel, not just being great at fitness.
Right.
And that's not a knock on the sport. It's just the sport got so complex. You have these young kids snatching 225, which was like a respectable 1 or 2 rep max when we were competing.
Yeah.
Now guys are throwing up 300 pounds.
No problem.
And it's like the level of time, intensity, sacrifice, you almost have to do it full time. There's a few people that still work jobs and compete, but for the most part, when you're looking at the top 10 competitors in CrossFit on both men and women, that is their job.
That's what they're doing.
And I don't know, I think that diminishes what CrossFit started as, which is here's a tool that makes you very well-rounded for life. And then it became the specialty was specializing, which is the epitome of every other sport. And it almost felt a little bit hypocritical.
Yeah.
And I think they're trying to figure that out now. I think Vellner and Fikowski and some of these guys with the PFAA are trying to talk through it to enhance the sport. I know there's some complexity with the death of Lazar this year, which very, very sad set of circumstances. And I know CrossFit's trying to figure it out, but I don't know. You and I were kind of in it at that time where it's like you coached at Stay Classy, I coached at Invictus, and then we would like throw down at competitions, and it was like we still went to work on Monday.
Yeah.
And times have just changed, but it's just interesting to kind of reflect and go down memory lane a little bit. And it's interesting too and impressive that you saw that moment as an inflection point of like, I need to make a shift here.
Yeah. Well, I didn't discredit either. I was like, look, these kids are going to continue to push the bar, continue to elevate themselves. And I'm like, good, right? It's just like now you've seen your time, right? You've had your fun.
Which is great maturity. Like that's hard to do with ego.
Right.
Like, I can hang on a little bit longer. It's like, I definitely played that game for a little bit.
Yeah, but it's just like, I also understood, it's just like, how does this feed my face? How does this feed any kind of expectations of a career or growth? Like, it's just like, as much as I appreciate it for what it was, I'm just like, is this going to put food in front of me? Right? Is this going to pay my rent? And that's just the harsh reality of it all. It's just like I had kids and I would feel so terrible. It's like these Division I athletes. It's like, oh, I quit doing that just to do CrossFit full time. I'm just like, no, please go back to school.
Yes.
Go back to the sport. And look, and that's the thing. It's just like they're going to make their own choices. They're going to make their own decisions. But at some point, I knew naturally step away. But I still love that. I still love the camaraderie. I still love the push. I still love the dynamics of like being competitive. And honestly, I found that again, I think, with Fitstop. And now I say this in correlation to what I was doing inside the weight room when I was playing football, when I was enjoying that experience, the energy, just like there's only so many people that really understand the energy inside of a weight room at like a collegiate level, right? Mm-hmm. It's infectious, right? And you live for it and it's fun and you're like almost like a bit of anxiety too, but it's just like, you're all supportive, right? You're connecting. You're just like, you're like, hey, you do this way, I'll do this way. It's like, I got you, I'll spot you. And like that, those moments in time are so beautiful, right? But we didn't realize what we had at that time. Fitstop, the way that the dynamic of the workout is set up, it brings back a lot of that. Mm-hmm. And I say that because we ask that our members work in teams of 2, teams of 3 throughout the entirety of the workout. It's never really a solo expectation, right? It's just like, you're going to partner up and I'm going to actually have you interact. I'm going to force a little bit of social anxiety and a little bit of like uneasiness from you if you're okay with that, right? I'm not saying it's for everybody, but every time you go to back squat, you're going to have 2 other people either spotting you, helping you, pushing you, making sure that they're there right with you. And that's like that's what I really truly appreciate about Fitstop. It brought back that love for teamwork inside of a weight room.
I mean, look at what's popularized now in the CrossFit space. It's I go, you go stuff.
Yeah.
It's sharing of weights where the person that's really strong might go a little bit lighter, maybe based on not wanting to change the weight or maybe less of a rest interval.
Right.
Maybe that day, they're just wanting to assimilate with their training partners a little bit. Somebody that's not as strong might go a little bit heavier. And just like you said, that forced interaction, like all tides rise.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of value that gets added to that. And also, I do think things being measurable has value.
Yeah.
But something I've thought about a lot lately is everything that's measured doesn't always count. And everything that counts isn't always measured. It's difficult to measure the vibe that you and I feel today. Right? But like we could go hit a workout. I don't actually give a shit of the weight that you have on the bar. I give a shit that we're doing it together and that you're working hard. And on the other side, we get to dab it up and be like, dude, that was so cool that we hit a workout today.
Yeah.
We got a sick pump. Now we're going to go off and do life and serve people and learn things. And I think there is an element of that is really important with the growth and development of functional fitness. It's like it's measured-ish, but it's not so measured to the point where like you're less than if your score is not that fast or because scores can be manipulated too, right? If I'm trying to get the best score, I might shorten my lockout a little bit. I might not stand up all the way on the squat. I might, shortchange my kettlebell swing a little bit. There's little ways and tricks of the craft to try to maximize whatever the numerical value is. But only intrinsically, hey, my goal is to look good and feel good and move well.
Yeah.
Well, if that's the case, there has to be this healthy relationship between optimizing form and technique and intensity. Mm-hmm. And it's like so much intensity, it's sloppy. So much form and technique, you're just slow.
Yeah.
And the answer is somewhere in the messy middle, case dependent on the person, the stress, the relevance, and the goals. Yeah. And I think that's what I really love to see what you guys are doing is it's not just movement like it kind of was at F45 where it's like move, you're on time, you're doing things really fast, get people in and out. And like there's value to that, elevated heart rate, community, camaraderie, unique movement modalities. But what I love is this strength and conditioning concept, minimizing complexity, team dynamic type stuff which decreases anxiety because you don't feel alone and isolated. You're measuring weight and score a little bit and you can document that personally.
Yeah.
But it's not intrinsic of self-worth.
Yeah.
Or indicative of self-worth is probably a better word. And I think that is the secret sauce right there that's going to have development and correlation in the human experience for this world of everybody's a brand, everybody's an entrepreneur. If you're trying to go build businesses and do cool shit, you can't train 6 hours a day. No. And if you do, something's eventually going to have to give because everything in this life costs something.
Correct. Correct. I mean, you speak to something that is so fun because it's like, I was that guy though. It's like, I was teaching my athletes, hey, shorten this, game this. It's just like, you're figuring out how to produce something from a tangible score that was better. But I'm just like, what's the actual value you're getting from that workout? It's just like, did you actually perform anything that you thought was worth your time? I know constantly, I love it when CrossFitters come in for the first time to do a Fitstop workout and how they'll game it. Right. You know, we're all rep based products. It's rare that we work against the clock. So there's always a set amount of volume and tension when it comes to all of our programming. We do it over 12 weeks. We focus on the compound lifts, your squat, your deadlift, and your bench. And we want to see those progressive builds over time. Right. We're very kind of like methodical when it comes to putting together those 12 weeks, just to make sure that people are constantly seeing tangible results, right? The adaptation that we see from our members is incredible. And that's what I love about it. But when I'll have those CrossFitters come in, it's like, well, it's like, you know, we're working with about 8 pull-ups here. You're going to mix it in with, you know, maybe some cable work and something like that. It's like, okay, with the pull-ups, it's like, is this a for time thing? I was like, no, just give me 8 quality reps, right? Whatever you're capable of, pulling the scaps into position, you know, chin over the bar if possible, if anything, slow eccentric, right? It's like, oh, it's like, so can I butterfly these? It's like, but why? It's like, what's the intention? It's like, if that's what you're working on, if you're working on basically your shoulder strength, your hip strength, whatever that might be, go to town, right? But I'm trying to work on your overall development, right? It's like, I want to make you a little bit stronger here, right? And I think, you know, the way that people have been perceiving functional fitness, right, from like a per time or 4 time situation, and now having transition, is just like those habits are built in and they want to perform in that way still, which is fine. Like, I get it, but it's just like, let me try to not retrain, but help you understand my intention of why my program's built this way.
Yeah, and I think I like your terminology there around, it's not right or wrong, it's just different.
Yeah.
Right? Like 4 time is all about capacity.
Correct.
And then there's optimal scapular position. There's trying to really build in strength. And then something that I think about often when it comes to the phrasing functional fitness: push, pull, hinge, squat, carry, and then monostructural movements, meaning like jump rope, burpees, running, rowing, biking, skiing, jumping jacks, things like that. Box jumps probably. And I think when you take all of those things and you mix and match them and you put them in this digestible smoothie, they're very applicable to people. And I think you can hold space for people that want to kip or people that want to utilize some of those modalities. But for the majority of people, they need to pull in different types of planes of motions. Yep. And I think you guys are definitely understanding program design. I also love the simplicity. Right? Like in a social media age where everybody wants like the sexy complexity of like the Bar Brothers and the things that like look really good. If you push, pull, hinge, and squat, let's just remove the other stuff, you're pretty badass.
I'm going to guarantee you're going to get some good results if you do that over time.
Totally.
You know?
And like, that's not always marketable, right? I love to say on this podcast, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication.
Yeah.
Black tee and jeans always looks good. It's applicable if you're going to a business meeting. It's applicable on a date. It's applicable on a podcast. If the jeans are stretchy, you can probably wear it in a workout.
There you go. No, you're correct. And I think it's just like, we also forget that, you know, with consistency brings a level of understanding of form mechanics and just body awareness too. It's just like, now that you have a full understanding of those movements, I can now increase the intensity. I can increase the load. I can actually make you better throughout those things. The problem is just exactly what it is. It's like, we try to find that healthy balance of sexy and fun, but also staying consistent over time, right? You know, I was part of F45, and they, you know, one of their claim to fame was they had over, I think, 5,000 exercises in their database, which is incredible. To think that, you know, there's 5,000 different ways of movement, right, with whatever piece of equipment. But I'm like, is that applicable to actually long-term growth and development? It's like, yes, it's like that you can structure it for sure. And I think we did our best to structure it how you would see those results. But I'm just like, gosh, give me to hinge, give me to pull, give me to press, give me to squat, give me to carry, give me like a piece of monostructural. I'll figure it out, right? You don't have to give me a lot to make sure that you're going to get results.
I never have taken a formal F45 class, and I appreciate the movement. I appreciate the energy. I appreciate the variance. I think it had gamification and fun for people.
Yeah.
It was too much. At least to my eye, it was just like so many different movements and modalities that I think have more risk than reward.
Right. I think honestly, what it appealed to, right, was people that wanted to enter the functional fitness space. There was an intimidation factor that lived inside my gym at CrossFit that I think it lived inside of a lot of gyms, right? That people just naturally go, this isn't for me. I'm not that fit. I'm not that capable, right? You know, F45, I wouldn't say is a watered down version of that, but it introduced functional fitness to that crowd, right? The people that were terrified. Now, at some point, did they maybe plateau? Did they go through some injuries? For sure, right? But that was all indicative of kind of like how the programs are set up. Here's the thing, though. It's just like it helped. It really did help deliver a product to the masses who wanted those things. And I'll give it that. It honestly, from a movement standpoint, from just getting people to get out and introduce themselves into a group environment inside of a functional space, hands off, like one of the pioneers to figure that out.
I'll also say this about it. When you type in CrossFit into Google, there's a lot of torn hands. There's the marketing around Pukey originally.
Yep.
You know, modern day, it's, you know, somebody passed away at the 2024 CrossFit Games. The headlines are scary.
Yeah.
And understandably so, in the sense of like what CrossFitters are able to do is really impressive, especially on the sport level. But for the girl that just graduated college, that hasn't really lifted before, that just moved into her first apartment away from mom and dad, and there's an F45 downstairs next to the coffee shop. She can grab a coffee and go work out after walking her dog. Yeah. And then she can go upstairs, shower, and then go to her marketing job. That's convenient. It's super approachable. Yeah. It's not always super heavy. You don't see a ton of Olympic weightlifting. There is a hinge component, but it's not always like a dynamic hinge that's an aggressive receiving position where, you know, receiving a snatch overhead or a front rack position, which is incredibly uncomfortable for 99% of the population. It's relatable. It's approachable, and it allows people to do a form of functional fitness that has lower risk, that can then translate to looking good naked, going on a hike on the weekend, riding waves when you want, maybe a beach run. And now it's adding value to a beautiful life, as opposed to, you know, some of the other modalities are like, hey, I'm getting really good at fitness, but then in my personal life, like my hands are torn, I'm really sore all the time. And, you know, I look okay, but I'm having to eat a certain way and get so many calories because the intensity of the workouts is so hard. Now it becomes a fucking full-time job.
Yeah.
And so I think that F45 did a really good job of that. And then they were kind of the liaison to like, okay, let's refine this original methodology a little better. Now we're seeing it duplicated a little bit in different ways and different fashions. And we've seen Performance 360. We've seen the Yard, and now we're seeing Fitstop. And I'm sure we'll potentially see a few more, which I think is complementary that this stuff's working. And it is creating community in a way that's less intimidating.
Yeah, look, I think for maybe our generation, and of course the younger generations, you know, I think when we used to go out on weekends, it was like, go hang out at a nightclub, go hang out at a bar, go hang out with friends. And it was just like this sense of socializing was all kind of dedicated or predicated upon the fact that you have to go out and, you know, get inebriated or get, you know, a meal or something, right? It was just like, it was removing yourself and just kind of like letting those, it wasn't a daily, it wasn't a part of your daily basis where you're just like injecting yourself into a social scene, right? What I've really appreciated from boutique or group fitness is that people are now connecting. And I think this has been, you know, going on for quite some time. It's just like, this is my social hour, right? Yes. This is when I get to connect with these people that have the like-minded, are appreciative of the lifestyle, want these certain things outside of just going and getting obliterated every weekend at the bar and stuff like that. And so, you know, hence, you know, something like a class pass that pops up where you get to touch a lot of these different modalities. Now, we also know it's just like with anything, if you want results, consistency is key, right? So as much as I hate class pass, it's like, I get it. It's like people want to connect this way versus going out to the bars on the weekends, right? It makes complete sense.
I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. And the other thing that's really apparent is after high school, it's really the last time you see the same people every day. Unless you're involved in sports where you're going to a locker room collegiately and seeing the same people every day. Like even in college, like you don't have the same classes every day.
Right.
Sometimes your schedule is a little bit scattered. Classes are really big modern day. And so one thing that's great about this group fitness model is like you're going to the same place with the same common goal and like seeing the same person and kind of suffering next to each other. Even if you're never paired together, you never say a word. There's a mutual respect. And there's like, man, I love the instructor, Pete, or like, man, I hate that guy, or like, man, it was so hot today, or, you know, oh, that one exercise was so tough. Like, there's a connection. There's a relatability where, you know, even if it's in passing at the water cooler, or if it's like, hey, it was so good seeing you, you're like walking out to your car. It's like, there is a frequency that's exchanged. That's missed from so many adults, man. And I think if you look at total health, fitness, and wellness, tribal connection is so important.
Yeah.
And we learned that during COVID. Isolation is hell's waiting room potentially. It is miserable. It's not fun. You're forced to just sit with your thoughts, which has value in some capacity, but too much of anything is not good. And I think going to the same place, and the other thing that I really love of this like blended functional fitness, strength and conditioning, high intensity interval training, is there is a customized approach. Right? Where it's like, there may be a range of like, hey, we're going to do 4 to 8 reps. And there could be a tempo prescription. It's not always like, how much did you lift? There could be contractility. There's customization. There's scalability where it's like, oh, you know, you have this injury. Sometimes in certain classes, it's like, oh, you're less than. You're doing a different workout. You're not one of us.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's like you're doing something specific to you that's hitting the nail on the head. It's adding value. Now, when you leave, you're not in pain. You're healing whatever injury, you know, was bothering you previously. And even though we're not doing the exact same workout, we're bettering ourselves in the pursuit of this beautiful life.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And that's exactly how it should be, right? I think there's this natural terror that settles into people too. It's just like, this is an exposure to my peers, right? And this might be something that I'm not great at, or I just don't feel comfortable in this space yet, right? And it takes a while to get over those hurdles, especially if you're trying to introduce yourself into, let's say, a functional fitness space. You know, it's just like, I remember my first time actually walking into Outlier. And I tell this story all the dang time because I know how it can basically be transferable to anybody. I sat in my truck for a 5 p.m. class. I got there at 3 p.m. and I just watched the classes before me come and go, kind of a situation, just to kind of get a sense of what the space was. And this sense of anxiety settled into me. And I'm just like, dude, you're a collegiate athlete. You know the weight room. Get your ass inside and go introduce yourself to these people. You're going to be fine, right? But there was still that sense of like, oh my God, I don't know if this is for me, right? And I know people have that all the time. But as soon as they settle into it and they realize the connectivity, the sense of community, the way that they, it's like, so I have my manager, my studio manager, run a report every Thursday. And I see who hasn't shown up to the gym, who's a member, who hasn't shown up for that week. And I go, hey, reach out, see how they are. Either text, call, whatever that might look like. Okay. Usually it's a small report, but if anything, I want to know that my members are okay. I haven't seen them for the entire week up to Thursday. Where the heck have they been? But now the dynamic of my workouts is these people are being connected with the community, that the community is reaching out to them. Their workout buddies that they see on a regular basis every single day are just like, dude, I haven't seen you. Or where the heck have you been? Like, are you okay? What's going on? It's like, you missed squat day. It's like, or you missed, you know, we did an epic 3 RM, like, you know, the reps in reserve were 0. Like, where the heck were you, kind of a situation. And so now my studio manager is like, dude, I talked to all 5 of them or all 6 of them. People from the community have already reached out to make sure that they're okay. And I'm like, that's beauty.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Something that comes to mind there is success is in the agency of others. If you're always reaching out, you're actually not doing your job. Yeah. Because by you pairing them together, they're creating buy-in, connection, trust, love, and support with one another. Also, that is your greatest marketing tool, right? Like, it's not about creating leads, because it's like you being forward-facing, like, they know that this is your product. They know that's your thing. There's probably a little bit of like skepticism if it comes from you. But if it comes from a recreational consumer of the product, they're like, yeah, like, you know, I joined this community. Here are the X, Y, and Z benefits that I've received. It's the greatest thing that you can do. And the other thing that's great is it's so organic. Yeah. And I don't know, man, like, I think you're doing it the right way. I'm really excited to learn more and potentially be a part of it. The other thing I want to explore with you, Pete, is I think about this often. It's a big frustration of mine. And that is this relationship between preventative medicine, which is what you and I are doing, and reactive medicine, right? And it's like the cost points are hugely different.
Yeah.
Insurance model, cash model. What do you think can potentially be done here, right? Like now that your brain is slightly transitioning, the wheels are spinning, and you have this, you went from athlete to coach, now to over this umbrella perspective, business owner type. You have this business perspective now, but how do we take the business perspective and evolve it to the next step, which is a global perspective, creating buy-in around like, okay, reactive medicine is really freaking important. Big pharma is going to need to play a role. But why is this so much heavier than this? Why is this so expensive? And insurance models, and we've listened to Brigham Bueller on Joe Rogan. He's from Ways to Well.
Yeah.
And he talks often about like, man, here's the cost of this right here if I were to just sell you the generic version of this pharmaceutical drug. But if you go through the insurance model, you're paying a copay. The copay is probably more expensive than the actual medication itself. And then I get to bill your insurance this 20x marked up price.
Yep.
And it's crazy to me because it's not healthcare. It's business.
You're correct. And I think that's the thing. It's the economics that's driving that. I couldn't probably count on one hand the lobbyists we have in Washington, D.C. that are advocates for the health and wellness, right? Being proactive versus reactionary in that space. But I could probably list, 20 plus pharmaceutical companies that are in each and every one of our congressmen and senators' ears to promote and push that initiative. You're talking about money. You're talking about power, right? That's a complete rehaul on that entire industry in order for us to actually have any kind of wherewithal or any kind of traction in that space. So as much as I would love to say, like, there's light at the end of that tunnel, when there's money to be made at that size and that magnitude, it's going to be real tough to make those decisions and changes from our leadership, right? Now, that being said, too, it's just like, I love our work. Right, I appreciate our work, and I understand that our work probably isn't going anywhere anytime soon. I think from a day-to-day lifestyle and the way that we have it from an ease and sense of just purpose and being and living, it's like there is a pill you can take. There's a shot you can take. There's a doctor you can go see if something like that happens. It's like right now I'm dealing with people that are coming to me and saying, hey, can I do this on Ozempic? And I'm like, you can do this on and off Ozempic, right? I understand that's a bit of a crutch, and that's something that you feel like will probably help through the long-term goals and the expectations. But I'm telling you right now, if you show me the same commitment, understand a little bit more patience and work ethic, and also understanding that this might be hard. This isn't going to be easy, right? But I think that's going to make you a better person. That's going to improve on your character of that understanding versus just the simple, hey, where's the magic
Well, also,
pill?
there's no risk.
Correct.
Right? Or minimal risk when just putting in the work Ozempic comes. So, I mean, I challenge people that are listening to this, put that into Google or ChatGPT and type in side effects of Ozempic or side effects of semaglutide. And, there are benefits of it for some people. And, when doctor prescribed and monitored appropriately, this is not doctor advice, but it is suggestive advice. Like, I like the preventative approach first, right? Like before you just jump to that, okay, let's make sure morning routines are dialed in, 8 hours of sleep, optimal hydration, real food. If it comes out of a bag or a box, it's probably not the best for you. Dialing in sunlight, trying to get 10,000 steps a day, surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals, a great tribe and connective type group. Make sure that, your work is fulfilling and joyful. Like if you kind of do those things, you're going to have a pretty high quality of life. And if at that point, there's some sort of medical condition, okay, explore some of those concepts to be aids, but just be aware of the potential side effects.
Correct.
And be open to those types of conversations with the hope that it's a short-term use as opposed to a long-term use.
Yeah. And you're correct. Here's the thing too. I mean, we're speaking to something that is now, right? The current. for future learnings, I think it's so critical for our generation to speak to our kids about movement, about exercise, about proper nutrition, about sleep, which I think it's just like, if we had that information when we were younger, it's like we probably would have applied it. The beauty of like the way I get to live my life, the way I get to eat, the way I get to drink, the way I get to do all those things is because I started at a very young age of understanding the gym, right? I'm not saying you can't start now, right? I don't want that to be the case. It's like, I put on a ton of muscle as a young kid. I lived in the gym. I understood the gym. It was a part of my life. I didn't make it all my life, but it was definitely a part of it. And it's afforded me the opportunity to enjoy a drink every so often, enjoy a cheeseburger when I want to, or a slice of pizza. It's like, that's the beauty of this. And I think it's like sometimes we miss the educational factors of like, hey, we've got a generation behind us. Do we want them to deal with the same things we're dealing with now? Or do we want to educate them and help them understand that it is so critical that you want this to be a part of life, so you're not having to run to the doctor, so you're not having to take these, semaglutides and like all these peptides and everything that everybody's like just trying to shoot in their body for a quick fix. It's like, we can fix that problem. Let's just start at the source.
No, totally. Right? I also even making that concept a little bit more tangible, rather than just educating the next generation, show them. Right? As parents, taking accountability to be like, you know what, I'm going to work out and I want my kids to see. Yeah. We're going to eat quality food. We're not going to have bad things in the house. And then when we do have cheat meals or things like that, we're going to go out and we're going to understand that like these things are celebratory connective tools that we have on occasion. They're not things that are consistently readily available in the home where it can be this little tickle of temptation. Because I really do believe that like convenience leads to consistency.
Yep.
And so like that's why food prepping's so great, right? Like it's in the fridge, it's in, your glass Tupperware or whatever. You can just pull it out, microwave it, or heat it up on the stove or the oven or your air fryer when you're ready.
Yep.
As opposed to like, I'm starving. There's nothing really available. Quick little hit of Uber Eats, or let's go through the drive-through real quick. And, that works on occasion. But then when it becomes the habit, all of a sudden, you're putting all these foreign substances into your system. And at that point, it becomes potentially a problem.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking about I screwed up and I just missed my my meal prep for the week, and I just ran out. And I was running down here from LA, and I pulled over at a gas station. I was like, shoot, I'm missing a meal here. What do I buy? And anything that you buy off the shelves now, I'm looking at this thing and just looking at the ingredients list. I'm just like, there's not a damn thing in here I can eat. And it's like, I pulled the jerky, grabbed some nuts, and I was like, all right, we're good, kind of a situation. But it's just like, and it goes hand in hand with like the understanding of that, that industry, when it comes to, the agriculture industry, what we're providing, what's selling, what tastes great. It's just like, we've got it great. We've got it easy. The problem is now we have to make the correct choices and helping not only our generation, but the generation behind us to understand what's good and what's not. Right?
Yeah. I had a gentleman on, he's the founder of Organic Jaguar. His name's Austin Tarzan on Instagram. And he does a great job of that, of like defining what's going on with fragrances, what's going on with our plastics, what's going on with our water, ingredients and lotions. And then he does a good job of helping people understand, what does organic mean? What does low fat mean? Like tangibly understanding like gluten-free and some of these terms that seemingly are marketing terms that upsell some of the products, but you're not really sure, like grass-fed versus grass-finished. Like, how do we understand and conceptually know that like this is a good quality product? We also use like the eye test, and now there's food dyes in all kinds of the meats and in the fruits and the vegetables. So things may look really fresh and whatnot, but then as a byproduct, we're like not always sure. Yeah. And I think now more than ever, we're seeing this distrusting within the food system. We're seeing a distrust of doctors for the first time in a long time. I know in speaking to the baby boomer generation, they're very much like, oh, Dr. So-and-so said it, or even better yet, according to this study, here's the thing. And now we're seeing all the study manipulation and the big pharma infiltration there too. What advice do you guys give to your Fitstop community educationally around like how to understand all of this influx of information and what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong?
Yeah.
The Trident family taught me something really important this last year, that we are all a bundle of stories, both good, bad, and everything in between. All of their cold brews remind their customers that they are part of something bigger than themselves. I start my day with the Sweet Cream Cold Brew as I am prepping my mind and body for fitness, service, coaching, and podcasting. With various locations in San Diego, they offer over 14 nitro cold brews and a variety of specialty drinks. You can find the perfect brew and pair it with one of their treats from the Keto Bakery. You can check them out over at tridentcoffee.com and use code ALLSMITH to take your coffee experience to the next level.
I think you always go to the credible source, meaning who do you feel is credible in this space, right? Mm-hmm. There's so many times I've told members, it's like, well, this is what we're doing today as far as programming. It's just like, and I'll give them maybe some nutritional advice and stuff like that. You're allowed to ask why, right? I think so many people just go, that's the credible person. That's the person with reason. They know what they're talking about. Let them spit whatever they want. And you hope that's the truth, but it's okay to be like, well, why do you want me to do that? Why should I eat this? Mm-hmm. Why should I perform the squats at this range? Or it's okay to ask why, because if you don't know, right, you don't know if it's going to be good or bad for you, right? So here's the beauty, right? There's a level of information that is out there, right? It's finding those critical sources, making sure, but also appealing to those critical sources and testing them, being like, hey, let me reach out to you. You said this, this, and this about, gluten-free, whatever. It's like, can you help me understand where you're getting that information from? Right. I tell everybody, whenever you're looking at a scientific study, it's like, look who paid for that thing. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's like, oh, it's like nicotine's great for you. It's like, look who paid for that. It might've been big tobacco that paid for that study. Right. Mm-hmm. It's just the same thing. It's just like our parents' generation saw it too, when it's like, oh, it's okay to smoke, during these times, this would be good for you. It's just like, well, who paid for all those studies? It was big tobacco. It's being mindful of those things. It's like, but at the same time, we feel that people, when it comes to, the consumption of goods and just living your life, you want to help that people are inherently good and they're not just trying to sell you something. But you look at that package, it's got 19 grams of sugar like 19 grams of protein on it. But you turn that damn ingredient list over and you see all the oils, the fillers, the chemicals, and you're just like, I'm being sold, right? I'm being sold to, right? It's just like, just take the time, ask why. And then if anything, find those credible sources along the way too. I think it's just, it's taking the time to actually have those conversations with people,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I also think it's not always that bad to skip a meal.
No.
Right? Like for many of us, like in relating it to primal days, like Mark Sisson talks about this, the author of the Primal Blueprint, like move often at a slow pace. When you think back in the day, like there wasn't always a plentiful amount of food available. Food prep wasn't always available. And in some ways today, you were a hunter and gatherer coming down here. And you did the best you could with protein and fat and things that had limited ingredients.
Yeah.
That's probably what people did when they were foraging and they were in the forest trying to find things. There wasn't always animals to kill. There wasn't always berries or fruits or potatoes available.
Yeah.
In some cases, that's okay. Like we're going to have plenty of glycogen and we are going to survive and we're going to teach our body a little bit of resilience, a little bit of like mental fortitude. And I'm not saying to always do that. And I'm not saying fasting is always the answer, but it's okay sometimes.
For sure. No, you're correct. And that's the thing. It's just like, I tell people, it's like, do you need that meal or are you just bored? Mm-hmm. Right? Or is this just habit that you created? Right? Every time I pop in the car, I make sure I have like my coffee, my water, and it's like, I'm good to go. Right? It's like, that's just habit for me now. I've created that habit. But now it's just like, okay, now I need a snack or I need a bar or I need a meal or something. I'm like, wait, have I just created a habit out of boredom, like of sitting in the car and listening to my podcasts? Or is this like, is this something that I actually need or want right now? Mm-hmm. Right? And you're completely correct. It's just like, what's going to be the big differentiator if you miss that meal? Right? What's going to set you back? Like, is it really going to temper you that much to where you're like, oh shoot, I missed another meal? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, totally. I want to pivot a little bit. I have a little bit of a controversial question for you. What's the secret for a good-looking, high-performing male to have longevity in the field of wellness? Right? Like, we talked about it briefly online. When you look at social media, women market better than men.
Yeah. They
get way more attention than men do. That might add to enhanced bank account. Maybe attention is the highest form of currency on social media. Women are very marketable. They do a great job selling themselves in a very positive way.
For sure.
Most of them in a positive way. It's not as easy for guys.
Yeah.
And so, for both men and women, you see roughly that 35 age range where people are like, okay, like I can't seem to make it in health and fitness. My body's changing. My plate's more full. maybe I have kids now. Maybe I, have goals and aspirations, trying to put money towards retirement, 401k, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going to make that pivot. I'm going to jump into corporate America. You're doing it, man. You're extending the lifelong range of the fitness professional, and you're doing it as a male. You've had to pivot. You had to move a few times.
Yeah.
But what's the secret sauce there for people that are trying to make a lifelong career out of this without wanting to sell their souls to the cubicle?
Yeah, dude. And I can't tell you how many times I look back at that cubicle and go, you know what? You could have made a lot more money doing this. Maybe not as much stress. Maybe all these things that could have equated to it, right? You really got to love this industry, right? And that's being truthful. I mean, I think some people get into it because there is an aesthetic look, or they might look a certain way, and like their genetics really help them out, and they lean into it because they're getting that attention, they're getting that recognition. But I feel like some people are just going through the motions, and they're just like, yeah, I do this thing because I'm getting recognition or I'm getting paid to do so. It's like, what's my actual pivot? What's the actual value I see at this thing at the end of the day? And I think it's just like, if you are in love with this industry and you want to make it a profession, you got to put in the time, you got to put in the ethic, but you also have to understand it's not going to be easy. I can't tell you how many times I think my members more or less felt sorry for me versus actually just showing up for the gym and wanting to pay that. It's like, with Stay Classy, it's like I slept in that gym for probably a good 3 to 4 months, just because I couldn't afford rent. And that was a part of me looking at myself internally and being like, shoot, is this it, right? Is this really what I want to do with my life? Do you love it that much to continue to kind of live in this, like, half homeless, half like, in out phase? Is just like trying to figure out where the next meal was coming from. It's just like, for me, it was that level of passion that I had for it, but it's also the resilience to go, you just have to make sure you're fed, dude. You just have to make sure whatever you do, it's just like you're worried about you. And that was a convenience in so many ways. And I understand some people have families, they have kids they have to look after. And that was the beauty of me in my 20s. It's just like, hey, get to focus on you, right? If this is what you want to do, right? If this is something that you care about, at some point this will pay off because you have the work ethic to make it happen, right? You just have to give it the time and the attention, right? If you start to pull away, which I did, there's multiple things that were little distractions. It's like, oh, I'll go do this modeling gig, or I'll go do this over here. Or it's like, oh, that's easy money. But that was me just trying to feed myself. I knew always where my heart was in the fitness game. And then, it's one of those things, I'm not saying it was luck involved, but I established myself well enough to get the opportunities for people to recognize and be like, he's doing something right down there. Let's see if we can get him on our team, right? And I always tell trainers and coaches, it's like, people will recognize you for those things if you're providing it for them on a regular basis. You're always being interviewed. You're always dating. Regardless of what you're thinking, people are always taking an eye to what you might be doing. If you want to do this on your own, or if you want to elevate your experience, your career, let's say you just want to own a gym, I've got 200 plus members coming to see you on a regular basis. And guess what? They're affluent. They can afford this. They might be affluent enough to actually support you through your passion or your dream. If you perform for them and they go, I want that person to open up one of these with me, right? I want this person to open up a Fitstop with me. Those trainers need to recognize that on a regular basis. It's like, if they have that it factor, if they're producing that on a regular basis, people will be like, oh, like there's something special about that person. I want to connect. And I'm not saying I did that every day, but if anything, I wanted to give 100% to each and every one of my members every time they had that experience. F45 got a wind of me, and they're just like, this is the guy. It's like, I got to work with some pretty substantial people up in LA. I was making those trips back and forth just to work with them. And then lo and behold, one of my kind of like good friends / clients was just like, I need to introduce you to the creator of F45. I think you'd be phenomenal for these guys, to help these guys out. And that was just the sheer will of course, luck. But at the same time, I produced, right? I was happy to give them 100% every single time. I think that's the thing. It's just like, you got to love it. You really do. But at the same time, understand that there's like, it's going to be some nasty times. There's a lot of work involved. And sometimes it doesn't come to fruition, For
sure.
So,
how have you navigated the mental and emotional part of that? Right? Dude. Like there's a lot of rejection in this field, not just in the job market, but with members, right? Like you may form a close, meaningful relationship and they go through a ton of positive change and then they get a job switch and they got to move, or they can't afford it because they lost their job, or they're going through a divorce, or something's a little bit closer or a lower price point. Like you see all the different reasons time and time again. And it's difficult. And then also, getting older, your performance is going to change. You're not lifting the same as other people. Your body's not always looking the same. Maybe you're navigating injuries on occasion. You need to stay, ready and available so that way you can demo things, which means you might not be able to train quite as much.
Yeah.
You might need to cut that workout a little bit shorter because you have, 3 calls with other coaches to onboard them into a new thing. Your responsibilities are going up.
Yeah.
How have you navigated the mental and emotional side of things where like people think you get into fitness, you're like, dude, you're going to have so much time to train. You're like, oh, it's not really how it works.
That's never how it works. Everybody, they're like, it's impossible to not be fit if you own a gym. And I'm just like, dude, you don't want to be in the gym. Sometimes you just don't want to be there. Luckily enough, yes, I was a gym rat and I love being in the gym. To a detriment, I think, too, at the same time. I think it was probably into my late 20s, into my 30s going, what else are you doing besides this? Like, what other hobbies? What other things are like exciting you about life outside of just living in this gym, right? And trying to make something out of this. And that was a reflection point, right? And thank God I've surrounded myself with great friends. I have my family dynamic. My siblings are incredible, like, people that I get to bounce things off on a regular basis. And plenty of kind of self-reflection too, I think. Because you're correct. It's just like it engulfed my life. It was all that I knew. But naturally, I knew it's just like mentally, from that standpoint, it wasn't good, right? I was like, I'm creating this walled-in approach to fitness and health, which it wasn't healthy, right? And it's just like, now how am I applying this? How am I actually enjoying my health? How am I enjoying like all these attributes that I've given to myself inside this space? And it took good friends and siblings, girlfriend to go, hey, let's apply the fitness. Let's go travel. Let's go surf. Let's go, ride a horse kind of a situation. It's just like, it took me a while to kind of really understand that the gym isn't the end all be all, right? There's more to life than just living inside these 4 white walls. So
it's very cool.
Yeah.
What kinds of injuries have you navigated over the last decade or so, and how have you found ways to overcome some of those to stay in tip-top shape, to look the part, but also to demonstrate and be there to help support people with, optimal mechanics and whatnot?
Yeah. Look, I mean, the foundation I set at a young age has created this platform for me to stay relatively healthy, right? The bulk of my injuries have probably happened through my sport, right, which was football at the time. And that was, when I was younger. And naturally, I kind of deal with those things now. I think it's like this not chronic fatigue that happens, but just like the wear and tear of a body. Look, I'm not taking as many topless photos as I used to. Let's say that. But I still appreciate what I've built, right, from a younger age. Now, is the volume as high? No. Is, the amount of workouts as high? No, right? But am I still getting that healthy respect for my body and just creating movement in ways that I probably didn't in the past? Just 30 minutes of walking, just doing a light jog with some friends, stuff like that. That it's just like I now see as workouts versus just activities, right? But to just take that pivot and shift and be like, hey, that's not the world you live in anymore, right? It's okay to embrace these things. It's okay to slow down a little bit and move when you feel good. As far as anything in the past decade, look, I've been lucky enough, I think, to undergo one surgery, which was an appendix surgery, throughout the past 10 years. But again, I think I equate that, or I give praise and love to the fact that it's just like I built a strong frame at a young age. And I'm not saying you can't do that into your 30s or even in your 40s. But just know that will afford you longevity in your latter years. It's just like I see it time and time again. It's just like, it's like, my grandfather, he had he passed probably about 4 or 5 months ago now. But he was active, but he was a baseball coach, right? And he loved being out there on the baseball diamond. And you just saw the quality of life because he was healthy. He was fit. And I think naturally, going back to kind of like the pharmaceutical and the reactionary drugs, it's just like, yes, we can keep you alive longer, but what's the actual quality there? It's just like, what kind of life are you living, or are you just hanging out, And I think that's the beauty of just understanding it at a young age. Just like apply.
You get lifetime reps, man.
Yeah.
And those lifetime reps turn into habits, and those habits turn into unconscious competence. And when it's like brushing your teeth. It's just part of your day-to-day lifestyle.
Part of your day-to-day. Yep.
And then you don't really need to think about it. It's almost thinking about not doing it. The discipline becomes having the discipline over the discipline.
Correct.
Which is kind of an interesting dichotomy.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the rise of wearable technology? Right? We're seeing heart rate monitors. We're seeing the Oura Ring. We're seeing the Whoop strap. We're seeing all the Apple Watches. We're seeing the Garmins. Does that stuff play a role in Fitstop, and how does it play within your headspace as a professional?
Oh, gosh. I mean, look, I think they're assets if you allow them to be assets. You know, there's always, I think, you know, OTF, Orange Theory Fitness, right? I think a lot of their brand and a lot of like their structure was, you know, connecting with the heart rate monitors and seeing where they're at and their splat points and all this fun stuff. You know, they tied themselves directly to a tech, right? A piece or wearable tech. And I can't tell you the amount of trainers and operators in those spaces. It's like every time that tech failed, the backlash that I would get from my members on why it's not working, or it's like, oh, it's like my points are racking up. And it's just like people equate like a good workout to whatever their wearable is telling them. And I'm just like, oh, there's a direct connection here that they're missing, right? They don't need that in order to get a great workout. I remember the first time I had a client stop in the middle of a workout because his Apple Watch was telling him his heart rate was at like a variable low that he just didn't feel comfortable with. And he's having a full conversation with me. And I'm like, you're still putting together full sentences. I'll let you know when you need to slow down. It's like right now, heart rate's good. He's like, but the watch. And I'm just like,
they become so married to the tech that they forget that level of intuition.
Correct.
What am I feeling? What does that mean?
Yeah.
You know, where's my respiratory rate in relation to just like day-to-day life?
Yeah. Look, I understand them as assets, and I get it as far as just like a good tracking device. And I think it's something that also can be an investment piece into your health and wellness. I think sometimes people need that. I'm gonna out him, but he's a great client of mine, and I've been working with him a little bit right now, Bert Kreischer, right? He's got an interesting lifestyle, but he will wake up and be like, well, here's my recovery. This is what my Whoops is telling me this day. I'm like, well, how do you feel? Like, tell me actually how you feel. It's like, oh, I feel good. It's just like, okay, well, it's like, how many drinks did we have last night? Right? Or it's like, do you feel like you're recovered? But I think also the dopamine effect, or actually, I'm sorry, the placebo effect of him just seeing, oh, I'm 98% recovered. Let's turn it on today. Versus like, oh, it's like, I'm only at 70. It's like, dude, you could have rolled over on your watch. You could have done something funky. It's just like, it could have read you off. But immediately he equates it to that number. And I'm just like, hey, get that out of your mind.
That's why I stopped wearing them. Because I was under recovered very frequently in the pursuit of growing a business and whatnot. And there were days that I felt awesome. But then I looked at it and I'd be like, oh, man.
I missed again. Yeah.
It's owning me rent free between my ears. It was a great tool.
Yeah.
It was something that kind of steered my habits in the right direction. But once it started like living rent free between my ears, I was like, all right, we're going to take a little break. And then we can always come back to it. Speaking of business, man, like you're in it now. You're looking at how to scale. You're looking at client retention. You're doing some personal training type stuff. Yeah. You're doing stuff for wellness brands. You're doing things with a little bit more of a visionary perspective.
Yeah.
How did that develop? What advice would you give to up and coming personal trainers that are trying to develop a slightly different perspective on the industry so that they have transferable skills that are maybe scalable as they do start to get closer to 40?
It's a great question. I mean, look, I learned fairly early on in my career in fitness that I didn't want to be back on my gym floor. And that means, hey, you got to continue to work your ass off and continue to kind of like push the initiative if it's going to be a career choice for you, right? Understand your value, understand your worth, right? Never discredit that. But at the same time, connect with people that you know naturally have the same drive and appreciation for the business of health and wellness. I've been lucky enough to be exposed to some of those incredible humans and create a relationship and a network that has helped me thrive inside this community. I give them all the love in the world because they've helped me get to this space. It wasn't a solo journey. As much as I can like say, it's like, oh, I did this all myself. No, I have incredible mentors. I have incredible coaches. I have incredible partners. But I also gave them the time and the attention that they needed, right? And, you know, it's just like I helped them throughout the process. Never know. It's just like you never recognize, you know, how or what somebody does until you actually have a conversation with them. And you get a sense of like, oh, it's just like, don't always see it as a business interaction, but understand like, I will connect with this person, and I know that they're willing to kind of like go to that deep end with me on this project if they're willing to do so, right? I get to work with my friends, right? I get to work with people that I care about, people that I love, and that's the best part, right? I'm not saying that, you know, each and every one of my friends needs to be doing what I'm doing or helping me with a certain project. I understand their value and their wealth and what they're capable of doing. But if I ever see that, I'm going to basically elevate that, and I want to elevate that with them, and they're going to push me the same way. So I think it's just like, it's the way I've been able to connect and kind of like continue to cultivate those relationships time and time again has really kind of helped throughout my career, you know, as I get in my 40s with this.
Yeah. A word that's come up for you a lot is capable. It sounds like to me that you've really sharpened your sword, so that way when opportunities present themselves, you're capable, you're ready.
Yeah.
And you're confident that you can execute on that strategy, even if it's slightly different than the specificity of a historical track record. You're like, I have the generalized tools to go accomplish the task. And I like that you've emphasized that a lot, because it's not always, oh, I've done that exact thing before. It's, I've done something similar. Yeah. And if we tweak the Play-Doh a little bit, we can mask this into an appropriate fashion, so that way it's appropriate over there too.
I think that's what makes life exciting though. You know, when I stepped over to the UK with Fit, great company, but I'm used to yelling and having fun with a group of people of 20 plus every single day, interacting, engaging, getting tactile with people. And all of a sudden I'm standing in a studio screaming at cameras, and I'm like, whoa, this is different. I might have some of the tools to get me through this, but this is uncomfortable. But it's also helped me through that process develop a whole nother skill that I didn't realize I had, right? I think discomfort is it's critical in so many ways, especially throughout, I think, not only work, physical, everything, but just in life. Those subtle discomforts where you feel like I still have the tools to perform under this, but if I don't, I'll get coaching, I'll get help, but I'll also recognize if I'm good at this or not, right? I think that's just, it's self-reflection all the time, but also at the same time, it's okay to struggle. It's okay not to be good at something, right? If you're willing to put in the time and the effort, and you feel like eventually I might get good at this, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Most people are so concerned in their own heads about, you know, how you're judging them.
Yeah.
And you have this spotlight, maybe when you're performing a new task that you're not so good at, that like, oh, they're thinking about me in some way. Oftentimes they're not thinking about you anyway.
No.
And so I think it's from Alex Hormozy. He talks a lot about, like, you know, most of the people that you're trying to satisfy aren't going to be alive in 3 generations. So by you wasting your psychological headspace, energy, and emotion trying to satisfy them, it doesn't really matter anyway, because they're fighting their own demons.
Yeah.
And so I think when you're able to use maturation and get over that and focus on, like, you know, there's no rejection or there's no failure. It's just redirection and learning. Now you're sharpening that toolbox. Because like you said, when you're yelling and, you know, rah and in a gym and trying to bring that energy, you're also getting the body language back from them. You're getting that like ping pong of energy. Yeah. When you're doing it on camera, you're like, I think it's being received. I'm not really sure. And like, maybe it's coming off as positive. Maybe it's negative. Maybe it's somewhere in the middle. I'm not really sure if it's landing. Yep. But I think when the intention is there, people can feel that bleeding through. And then over the course of time, I'm sure you were getting feedback and refining the projects as you went along.
No, I mean the times that I got done and I would just go to my camera guys and be like, hey, how was that? He's like, dude, you crushed that. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I had no clue, because you guys were quiet the entire, in which they have to be, but there's no body language. There's no physical, like, yeah, all right.
Yeah, one of my favorite things on a podcast is like when you can see somebody nodding the head, or like if I'm speaking and like Mitch looks at me and gives me like a thumbs up, like that was good. Because sometimes the camera doesn't speak back to you.
No.
Like, oh, how was that? I'm not really sure. I guess we'll find out based on, you know, the response from people.
But you also spoke to something that is directly, I think, correlated to why we kind of put ourselves in boxes. The 3 generations removed. You're correct. I think, you know, there was always this internal voice for me, which I thought was like an external presence of like, socially, I'm going to get judged for doing this, right? I'm going to drop a good job that I had, and I'm going to jump fully into this health and wellness, right? I'm jumping to fitness full time. It's just like I have no means to do it. I really am. It's like I'm not sure where the money's going to come from, and I have this degree, this incredible degree that I probably should be putting into play. It's just like I do all these things, and I'm just like, what was that external voice? Like, what was that social pressure? And I think it just came back to, it's like, what is mom going to think, right? What are my siblings going to think? What about like my best friends, right? It's like, what is, it's like, but those were probably the most supportive individuals. I really shouldn't have cared of what all that other noise might have been, because those are the only ones I really cared about. And they were being supportive of the process all the way through. Having that support and having those people in your corner is great, but you're correct. It's just like caring about what else everybody thinks about you on a regular basis. That's just going to bury you, because guess what? They're going to forget about you, and you're going to be forgotten in 3 generations from now, unless, you're, I don't know, Michael Jordan or Jesus Christ himself, So it's just one of those things.
Totally, man.
Yeah.
If we were to summarize some of the top sustainable fitness habits for somebody that maybe happens to come across this podcast today, and they're like, you know what are 3 to 5 things that I can do right now to enhance my quality of life via fitness and wellness? What would you tell them?
Yeah. I actually just got this question he's a sweetheart of a kid. He's probably like, late teens, a little bit overweight. He cleans my gyms for me. He's a great kid. He goes, hey, how do I start off? Like, where do I start? And I was just like, well, what I want you to do first and foremost is just go walk for 20 minutes every single day. Right. If we can do that for a month, you come back to me, you let me know. Okay. But I want you to track it every day you walk. Just go walk for me. And he goes, well, hold on. He goes, everybody has always told me, it's like, I got to do this in the gym. I got to do this. I'm like, first we got to create habits. Right. And I got to get you moving for at least 20 minutes out the day. Right. That's all I want. Okay. Came to me after a month. He goes, Pete, I've been walking, feel good. I feel like a little bit like leaner too. And I'm like, great. Okay. Now what I want you to do is I want you to try to get at least 8 hours of sleep. At least 8 hours of sleep. You're a kid. You don't have a ton of responsibility right now. Mm-hmm. Don't have to be at work. Don't have any kids yourself. Give me 8 hours, right? And he goes, it's going to be tough. And I'm like, put the phone down, and just try to, he's like, okay. It's like, oh, how do I do that? I was like, just track your sleep for me, right? I still want you to move. Still want you to do this. Comes back a month later. He goes, Pete, I'm struggling, but I'm getting at least 7 hours of sleep. I'm like, that's good. That's good. Okay. Now what I want you to do, okay, is I want you to start focusing on your diet, right? And I want you to say, okay, what's your ideal body weight? And I think it was like 180 pounds or something like that. And I was like, let's see if we can get 180 grams of protein per day. I was like, I just want you to turn the label over, make sure, write it down for me, and get 150. Or sorry, yeah, it was 180. And he was like, okay, I was like, just keep walking. Just keep walking, get the sleep, give me the 180, right? We're just adding incremental changes, right, to all this.
Habit-based coaching.
Yeah, and then we introduced water, and then we got him into a program. So I was just having him create monthly habits over and over again, starting with just moving, then sleeping correctly, then the diet, then the water, and now we can get him moving correctly, right? Mm-hmm. He was willing to commit to those months versus just being like, I need something now. Right? I want to fix something now. The harsh reality is now doesn't exist, right? If you want changes now, you're going to have to work for them, right? Making those subtle changes, right? Big or small, right? Whatever that might be, just commit to it for a month, and then you'll see those true benefits come along. I'm not looking for a crash course in like how to diet, how to work out, how to sleep. It's just if you can commit to those small things every single day, you're going to see the changes you want, right? It's just
keep it simple, stupid.
Correct.
And the thing that's so interesting is it's all about the consistency over the intensity for most people, right? And like you could have wrote him this beautiful program, but then as a byproduct, he's probably not developing the habits that are going to give him long-term sustainable health.
Correct. And what I saw is his time management. It was a mess.
Yeah.
Kid just didn't have any time management, right? And I think some adults struggle with time management, the procrastination and so on and so forth. But it's just like, hey, if we can figure out how to manage those times and manage those blocks, this is going to be a lot easier for you, right?
Love that, man.
Yeah.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
Gosh, that's a great question. The best advice I've ever received. I'm going to go quiet on you for a second. Let me think about this. Now, this is coming from my father, who hasn't given me a ton of advice. And because he was absent, too, at the same time. But one of my favorite pieces of advice, and this is honestly just because I've struggled in the past with like relationships, right? And I should say business relationships is just finding my person, right? And I think he struggled himself too, you know. But one of my favorite pieces of advice he ever gave me was, he goes, "Don't marry crazy." And I was like, I don't plan on marrying anytime soon. He goes, "Don't date crazy." And I was like, okay. And, you know, here's the thing. I appreciate strong-willed humans. I love people that are go-getters. I love people that have fire, right? And I think he had seen enough of my companions and the people in my life with that fire that just was that next level. And it was just like, okay, you're done with that. Look, I've got a great partner. She's incredible to me. She pushes me in all the right ways. And she's just that fine level of crazy that's been good enough for me too at the same time. So
that's awesome, man. I've had a couple experts on that. We've talked about the dating world.
Yeah.
And it's a wild world out there, man. You've got all the dating apps. Yeah. You've got all kinds of, the grass is greener on the other side.
Yep.
Both sides seemingly are playing the field. It's a mess.
Look, I mean, I've enjoyed focusing on myself and my career for the bulk of my, you know, my adulthood. Now, as I get into it, and I've been dating and going through that, it's just, it is a roller coaster, but I got lucky. Somehow I got lucky with this one. So hopefully she just continues to put up with my bullshit.
I think Chris Williamson said it. He said, most men can solve problems by simply going to the gym and making money.
Yeah.
And I think if you focus on yourself and you do that deep work and you take care of your health and your wellness, like your relationships, you're going to learn to attract. Your jobs, you're going to learn to attract. You're not going to be chasing where the bunnies or the hummingbirds are running away. And I think you've done that very well in your career so far, man. It's a pleasure to have you on to kind of share some of your story and some of the insights in health, fitness, wellness, and the business and the growth and development of Fitstop.
Thank you, brother. And then I'm excited, of course, to have this workout with you so you can experience Fitstop for the first time this Friday. Look, man, it's been a blast up to this point, and I appreciate you, of course, for making the time in your schedule and everything like this. You're an incredible human, and it's really been a joy kind of talking with you and being a friend for this long too at the same time.
Totally, man. Where can people find you?
Honestly, your best bet is probably Instagram. Pistol Pete. It's long story short, I was a massive Pete Maravich fan growing up, and everybody thought it's like, oh, you must love pistol squats, and I'm just like, no, that's Instagram came into fruition when, you know, CrossFit was major to me, and everybody's just like, oh, it's like where the name come from. I love basketball. Basketball was my sport growing up. I never got to the level you did, but I would watch VHSs of Pistol Pete Maravich.
He was a stud, man.
And I got the nickname as a young kid because a lot of the parents recognize it's like, oh, he's playing like Pistol Pete, like he's doing these drills. Yeah. And just like playing basketball, just like pistol. And then like, I thought Instagram was going to be this passing phase. Boy, was I wrong. I put in this stupid name, and then lo and behold, there it is. Now it's been sticking ever since. But
it's catchy, man. It's catchy.
Yeah.
Bang, bang.
Heck yeah.
Dude, that was awesome. Ladies
you.
and gentlemen, a peek behind the curtain with Pete Pisani. If you enjoyed my conversation with Pete today, please rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. And as always, stay on the hunt for who you've not yet become. Until next time.